Hey everybody, this is Bonnie with Bonnie Bay Crochet, and I am having a lot of fun these days upcycling old jeans jackets and shirts with crochet. Let me go ahead and show you some photos of what you can do too. So in this video, I'm going to show you what I did to transform this jacket with the popcorn sleeves. Now there's not a specific pattern with specific stitch counts and so forth, because all the different types of jeans, jackets and whatnot are going to be a little bit different in how they're constructed. But I do take you step by step through what I did, which includes cutting off a sleeve and using that sleeve as your template or as your pattern for what you want to do with your yarn. Well, come along and let me show you what I did. So one of the first things we're going to need to do is find a very sharp pair of scissors, and we're going to cut the sleeve off of our jacket. Now, in order to do this, I am leaving about a 1/2 inch or so of seam allowance so that I'm not having to sew into that very thick seam along jeans jackets. That's very difficult. Now I'm going to carefully cut the seam right along the seam so that I can duplicate this sleeve for you. Okay, maybe just be very careful to cut just as close as you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to get within the ballpark of this sleeve. And I am going to cut the cuff off a bit. So now let's go ahead and we're going to lay out just a sample sleeve that I've already completed for us. And you can see the sleeve cap that we're going to learn once we complete the sleeve itself. And also notice that it's not an exact representation, but it's close enough. There's about 1 inch or so of ease. It's a little bit smaller, but that's okay because there's a lot more ease of fabric in the crochet, and it may even stretch out over time. So it's fine to make this just slightly smaller. So now we're going to start at the cuff. And so what I would recommend you do is use this section. We're going to work something different for here at the end, but we're going to just measured distance, and don't forget to include this little piece. And what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate a starting chain in the distance that you see here. Now I'm not going to give you specific numbers on this because the sleeve that you may be using may be very different, and I want you to follow your sleeve as the template. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and crochet some chains that will be this length, and then we're going to start the popcorn pattern. Okay, so after crocheting that starting chain, for the record, I am using a chain of 42, but again, it really doesn't matter how many stitches you use because we are going to be adding stitches at the beginning and at the end of the rows. So that's going to continually change the number of stitches anyway. So now starting in the second chain from the hook, we're going to just work single crochets in each stitch across for the first row. After completing row 1, if your sample is a little bit curly like this, don't worry about it one bit because the next row or 2 is going to remove that. Alright, so for row 2, we're going to chain 1, and this is where we begin the popcorn stitch. Let's go ahead and single crochet in that first stitch. Then we're going to chain 1. We're going to skip the next stitch, and then the next single crochet, we're going to work 4 single crochets. This is going to make up the popcorn. Then we're going to pull up a loop. We're going to go back to that very first of the 4 single crochets worked in that same spot, put our hook in there, grab the loop, and then pull it through, and then give it a chain, and that forms our popcorn. Okay, after that, we're going to skip the next stitch. We're going to single crochet in the next stitch, chain 1, skip another stitch, and then we're going to work a popcorn in the next stitch. Pull up a loop, insert into that first stitch, go ahead and grab that loop, give it a chain, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the next stitch, chain 1, and then skip 1 more stitch here, popcorn in the next stitch by working 4 single crochets, pull up a loop, put the hook into the first of those 4 stitches, grab that extra loop and pull it through. Make sure too that when you pull this through that you don't have a super long loop here, but make sure that the loop is just a normal size. Make sure that you control the tension with your non-dominant hand. Chain 1, skip a stitch and single crochet in the next stitch. Let's pause and take a look at what we have. So this is what you should have. We have 3 popcorns. All right, let's go ahead and I'll do one more for you. Chain 1, skip a stitch, and then we're going to work a popcorn. 4 single crochets worked into the same space, and I am going below both of the loops of that stitch. Pull up a loop, insert hook into that first single crochet, grab it with the hook, pull it on through, and give it a chain. Skip the next stitch, single crochet, and again chain 1, skip a stitch, popcorn, etc. So this is what we're going to work all the way across the row. So go ahead and work that, and I'll show you how the row ends in my case, and I'll talk you through if you have different numbers at the end. At the end of the row, I'm going to skip the next stitch, and then I'm going to single crochet in that last stitch. Okay, let's take a look at what we have. So in my 42 stitches, I have, or actually 41 stitches, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 popcorns. Now I'm immediately going to want to start increasing because this is not nearly the distance that I need, because the shape of my sleeve kind of goes outward like a cone immediately. So in order to do that, I'm actually going to increase on the first row by adding 1 additional single crochet, just like that. Now we're going to chain 1, and we're going to turn. And so now let's go ahead and work with this. And what we're going to do is we're going to work a single crochet in that first stitch. Now if you have additional stitches, once you see the pattern, you'll understand what to do. If you have, let's say, a couple other stitches, you can just single crochet, and then we're going to chain 1. We're going to skip the next stitch. We're going to single crochet in the chain 1 space, which is the top of that popcorn. Chain 1, working again in the chain 1 space, which is between the popcorn and the single crochet. We work a single crochet, chain 1, single crochet in the top of the popcorn, chain 1, and it's essentially another chain 1 space again, but it's between the popcorns. Chain 1, working a single crochet there, and then a single crochet in the top of the next. So that you can see it's a single crochet, chain 1, single crochet, chain 1, etc. So if you have additional stitches here, you're just going to want to emulate that. So let's say if you have 2 additional stitches, it would be single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, and then single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, and then work in the top of the popcorn, and then chain 1, single crochet between the popcorns, chain 1, and again there is a chain 1 space there that you're working in, and then single crochet in the top of the popcorn, and then in between the popcorns, etc., with those chain 1 spaces. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this row, and I'll show you the end as well, because I am going to work another increase at the end of this row. After working all the way across, I come to that last stitch, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to work 2 stitches into that last stitch. Then we're going to turn. So to begin this row, I'm going to take a look to see where the popcorns are going to be. I'm going to put a popcorn in this chain 1 space, and by the way, they're only going to be worked in chain 1 spaces from now on, so this should make it a lot easier. I'm going to work 1 here. I'm going to work a single crochet in this space, and then I'm going to go ahead and start with a popcorn in that second stitch. So I'm going to chain 1. I'm going to single crochet in that first stitch. I'm going to make a chain 1, and then I'm going to work a popcorn in this next single crochet, because that will be staggered enough. Chain 1, and now this is the established pattern. We're going to skip that single crochet in the first or the next chain 1 space, chain 1, and then working in the next chain 1 space, which is between these 2 popcorns. We work another popcorn. Again, 4 single crochets, pull up a loop, insert hook into that first stitch of the 4 grouping, put it onto the hook, and go ahead and tighten that up a bit, pull it through, and then chain 1. Skip the next single crochet in the next chain 1 space, chain 1, skip the next single crochet, and we're going to work another popcorn in between those 2 popcorns. Pull up a loop, pull it through, give it a chain. Now I'm going to just not even mention the single crochets going forward. You're only working in the chain 1 spaces. So single crochet in that next chain 1 space, chain 1, and then popcorn in the next space. Okay. Go ahead and get that loop, and give it a chain, and then single crochet in the next chain 1 space. And let's take a look at how the popcorn are coming out. And you can see how they alternate in between the 2 from the previous row. And that's the way your popcorn should look all the way across the row. So go ahead and work that across, and I will show you the end of it. So having worked this all the way across, I come to the last stitch, and I'm just going to work 2 stitches, 2 single crochets in that last stitch, thereby creating another increase. So you can see that we have increased our popcorns to 11 per row, and each of these sides are starting to grow. So now let's turn to work row number 5. We're going to chain 1, go ahead and single crochet in that first stitch, and then chain 1, skip that next single crochet in the top of the popcorn, chain 1, and then just like 2 rows previous, we're crocheting single crochet in the next chain 1 space, which is between the popcorns, chain 1, single crochet in the top of that popcorn, chain 1, etc. So go ahead and work that row all the way across. Having worked row 5 all the way across, I come to 1 more stitch. Now if you have additional stitches, let's say if you have 2 stitches here, you can chain 1, skip 1, and then work 2 stitches in the last stitch. But since I just have the 1 stitch, I'm going to work 2 single crochets into that stitch, thereby making another increase. Okay, so again, don't be concerned about how the stitches end. Just make sure that you are adding a stitch at the end of this if you are wanting this sleeve to grow. So let me go ahead and start row 6 and show you how you would do that. This again would be another popcorn row. So let's talk through this a bit. So this, on top of this popcorn, is this chain 1 space that I'm going to work a single crochet in, skip a stitch, and then we can work a popcorn stitch in this stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and single crochet in that first stitch. I'm not going to work a chain 1 or anything. I'm going to work a popcorn in that next stitch, just because I figured that that's the best place to work it with this particular number of stitches. Again, this could be a little different depending on how many stitches you started with. Okay, after that, we're going to work a single crochet in the next stitch, chain 1, and then a popcorn in the next. Again, I'm being very careful to alternate these popcorns to make sure that they are staggered depending on the rows. Okay, let's go ahead and do a couple of these, and then I'll show you what I mean by this. Single crochet in that next chain 1 space, chain 1, and let's go ahead and work another popcorn. Pull up a loop, pull it on through the chain 1, and then single crochet in the next space, chain 1, etc. So you can see how this popcorn is in between the two from 2 rows previous. But what's also interesting is these are lined up now with the very first row of popcorns, and that's just how you get that symmetrical look, which I think is very, very cool. Okay, so go ahead and continue this, and let's take a look at the sleeve real quick. So you can kind of see how this is matching the trend of this sleeve, because this sleeve does increase quite a bit on both sides. Now let's take a look at this, and you can see that it's a little bit smaller. It's a little bit smaller on this end, but this is not going to bother me because the elasticity of this material is much more than the jeans ever will be. So even if it's just a tad bit smaller, it's okay, because you can work this in. There's going to be a lot of ease in this material, and you should be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and continue working this, increasing at the end of each row, as I've shown you, and just continue to repeat these rows. Okay, this would be rows 3, 4, 5, and 6. You can just repeat rows 3, 4, 5, and 6, and that should get you through. Now, when we get to the part where we have the sleeve cap, this is when you stop increasing, and this is the part that is shaped to the upper part of the arm. I will show you how to work the decreases so that you can shape it according to the shape that you need. So let's go ahead. I want to show you how to do the decreases. They're actually quite simple. We're going to chain 1, and so what we're going to do is we're going to work 1 decrease over the first 2 stitches like this by pulling up a loop in the first stitch, and in the second stitch yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on the hook, and that is a decrease. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, and then we return to our pattern stitch, and that would be working the popcorns in the alternating chain 1 spaces. I'll work a couple of these for you. And then single crochet in the next stitch. I'm working a chain 1, then single crochet, chain 1, and then again popcorn in the next stitch. Now, depending on the rows that you're working, this might look a little different and you might have to improvise, but the general principle is to decrease 1 stitch at each side. So I'm going to go ahead and work all the way across this row, and then I'll show you what it looks like decreasing at the end of the row. Once I get to the end of the row, I'm going to do what I did at the beginning. I pull up a loop in those last 2 stitches, yarn over, and pull through. Go ahead and chain 1 and turn, And again, I'm going to start with a decrease, pulling up a loop in those first 2 stitches and pull through, and then start back in the pattern stitch, whatever that is for where you are. So in my case, it's single crochet in that chain 1 space, chain 1, single crochet in the next space, etc. And I'm just going to continue doing this. Now every couple of rows, what I'm going to do is I am going to compare my sleeve to see how it looks with the sleeve cap, to see if I am decreasing aggressively enough on each end. Now if the sleeve cap is not as aggressively decreasing, you may need to only decrease every other row. You may want to increase on both ends 1 row, and then on neither end the following row. So it really depends on the shape that you're trying to emulate with your crochet. So I'm going to go ahead and continue on with this, and then I will show you what I end up with, and I will show that compared to the sleeve cap. So again, here is the completed sleeve as compared to the original sleeve, and let's go ahead and get ready to sew this together. So now taking the sleeve, we're going to fold it in half, and we are going to sew the seam that runs under the arm. This is not the cap of the sleeve that's on the upper part, but just the part that is the place where the increases were made. This should be a very straight line. And so go ahead and pin these. You can sew this by hand using machine or sewing machine thread, which is what I highly recommend. It creates less bulk when you do it that way instead of using yarn. I have chosen to sew this straight seam with my sewing machine. You can do that if you are skilled at using your sewing machine. Or again, you may sew this by hand. It's whatever you prefer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the sewing machine for the straight seam, and I believe I'm going to sew by hand when it comes to easing in the fabric for the sleeve cap. So I'll go ahead and sew that seam, and then I'll show that to you in just a bit. Now let me show you how this is going to look up against the jeans jacket. You may want to be careful to find where the center is for both the seam where you're going to be joining below, as well as the center of the jeans jacket on top, as well as the center of the sleeve cap. And you see here, I'm just joining this just to get a feel for where these places are in the fabric. And once I've determined that, then I am going to turn both pieces inside out and attach them, again, sewing them by hand. But see how I'm carefully using going to be using pins to just line these up carefully so that I know where these are going to be. You can line them up like this now and then turn both pieces inside out. It's really however you are comfortable sewing these, but do make sure that the right side is facing outward, or the both right sides, I guess, are facing each other as you sew this together. Well, I hope you enjoyed making the popcorn sleeves with me today to go on to an old jeans jacket. If you want to see more projects like this, please let me know in the comments below. God bless. Bye-bye.